Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to the Seen and Known podcast. I am Alicia Jones, your host, and this is a place where we seek to intentionally create a space for healing, honesty, and restoration. And I'm so excited about this episode. This is season one, episode two. And the title of this episode is Healing in the Black Community. And so I want to talk about why this episode is so important to me personally, and then I'm going to introduce our guest for today. So for me, I remember when I was teaching in the K-12 sector, I was teaching high school. And right, if you're a teacher, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Right at around sixth hour, I started to get a pain right here, like every single day. I used to get just this sharp pain, like, okay, the day is almost over, girl, and it got really bad to where I started having chest pain and all kinds of things. And so when I went to the doctor, he asked me what I did for a living, and I told him, and he said, "Well, actually, like I treat a lot of people that work at that school." And he said, my wife had something similar. I think this is anxiety, and it would be so bad to the point where my chest was just like almost just hurting, just so much pain. And I was really having panic attacks. I didn't know that that's what it was at the time, but I was experiencing panic attacks, experiencing just this generalized anxiety, and it was lowering my quality of life.
Mhm.
And so I say that all the time, like, man, I could have probably stayed in K-12 teaching if I just knew I had anxiety and was
Mhm.
being treated the way that I should have. And so it's really personal to me because now on the other side of that, and going through some really just normal life things that are challenging, like getting a degree, getting my doctorate. I went most of my doctorate degree without being medicated. I don't know how that happened.
Mhm.
So but now being a black woman and all of the hardships that we experience just because of society, it has been such a an increase to my quality of life by knowing how to treat my own anxiety and knowing the symptoms of depression and knowing when I'm probably going to have a hard time with something. And so that journey actually kickstarted the healing journey um, that I went on personally that ended up being this podcast. And so I personally am really passionate about the black community and us treating our mental health disorders if you have it. I feel like that is the most we talk about like our aunts and our uncles and our moms, how they would have these like little quirks and have things like they had to have things a certain way, or they would be stressed out, or my favorite term that my mom liked to say, my nerves just bad today. Okay, which probably means she has some anxiety. I know this for sure.
Mhm.
And so I think if we could have better lives and be better parents and be better partners if we were more aware of the health challenges that we can have. And so I invited someone I really, 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 really respect and love and appreciate his opinion. He might be a little opinionated sometimes, but I think that that is the way the Lord has made him, and we love him for it. And so I want to introduce Mr. Nick Young. He is a minister, he's an author, he's a therapist. He does all the things, okay? He's had 50, 11 jobs. All right. And so he has been a firefighter. He's a veteran. I can't tell you all the things. I'm gonna let you tell your own story, but I want to invite Mr. Nick Young to the Seen and Known podcast.
Um, Doctor, I am so grateful not only for my invitation to this podcast, but for who you are, not just what you do, but for who you are, um how you love, how you love yourself, how you love others, how you show up in space. I want to just thank you for that because I think that when you let your light shine and when you know that maybe it's not the time for my light to shine, it gives people the permission to let their light shine and it gives people the permission to pull back. So I just thank you for who you are as a person. And I think that this podcast space is a reflection of that. It's just a reflection of your heart posture. You taking everything you've learned and everything you are, and not just keeping it to yourself, but sharing it with others. So I'm happy to be here. Thank you for my invitation.
Yeah, well, you're welcome, and thank you for the kind words. I need, I don't try to be humble, so give me all give me all that. I need that, but truth be told, I really do appreciate it. And so I want tell the people a little bit about you. I know you very I feel like at this point, I've only been knowing you for about a year, but I feel like I know you. I feel like,
Yeah, yeah,
we locked in. And
yes,
so
yes.
so tell the people a little bit about your background, just your educational background, and also a little bit about your own journey with your personal mental health.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I'm a son. I'm a brother, a little brother. I'm an uncle. I'm a grandson. And I have a nephew and two nieces, and I got a grandpa that's one of my best friends, and I'm from the Southern Maryland region, and I'm a lover of kettle corn. I went to undergrad in Atlanta at Morehouse, and then I went off to um, get a master's in divinity in seminary in New Jersey. And while I was doing that, I got a master's in social work at the same time. And at both institutions, I did psychosocial research on the Black experience. And I think when going through that, like my MDiv was focused in pastoral care and counseling, and my MSW was micro focused in trauma and counseling. And in that, there's always this question: why are you doing this work? What brings you to this work? And I think the saying is true for me. That is true for a lot of people. Research is oftentimes me search.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think the genesis for me is not a linear one. I had a therapist when I was a kid named Craig. Craig was amazing, and we fell out of touch. Um, but I think in terms of when I really got invested in mental health, I was dating, and my partner had some mental health challenges, and I saw the ways in which the therapist failed her, and I was just wondering, what does it look like to have quality mental health care in the Black community? So it's a culmination of things, and then I think also in ministry, I found myself while attempting to do what the church would call God's work. I was really doing mental health work, but I
Yeah.
wasn't prepared. And I was
Mhm.
shooting from the hip and calling it the spirit. And so I wanted to, I think, one, be for some other young person what Craig was to me. I wanted to make up for a gap in the system that I saw in my relationship. And I wanted to be prepared for the people I was called to serve.
Yeah. See, I learned something new about you. So that's something I did not know. And I think my next question was I was gonna ask, when did you first realize that mental health was something you personally needed to tend to? But I think you answered that question.
Mhm.
I think a follow up question for me would be, now that you have this knowledge, what do you do day to day to tend to your mental health? Because I found that I encounter a lot of amazing Black men in the work that I do, because I work in higher education primarily. So I meet, men that are well up, vice presidents, presidents of universities, professors. I also meet people in my nonprofit work that are doctors, lawyers, etc., that
Mhm.
are Black men. And a lot of times when I'm talking to them, they'll tell me things that they're experiencing. And, it's kind of like one of those things, like when you see it, you can't unsee it. I
Mhm.
want to say, you're having a panic attack, or this is anxiety, like that
Mhm.
tightening in your chest. Like, okay, you having like not just nerves before you go speak somewhere, but like you almost can't talk, like some of the things that they're experiencing. I think that they are struggling with their own mental health. So what are some practices that you engage in to nurture yourself and care for yourself as a mental health professional and as a minister?
No, and I think you just named a group of people who are doing a lot of pouring, who are
Yes.
showing up, who keep the community up, and we need those people. We need those people in the best shape possible. But the saying is true: you can't pour from an empty cup.
Yeah.
Um, and in the same way, your body can be malnourished, your soul and your mind can be malnourished too.
Mm,
So being cognizant of that, being aware of that, the first thing I'll say is out of the 170,000 words in the English language, I think being a helping professional, one of the most important words you can master is no.
mm,
Being someone who pours, one of the greatest words out of the 170,000 words in the English language you can master is no. I sprinkle no's throughout my days because I can't do everything. And um, I won't do everything. I'm just a human. Marcus Aurelius, when he was the emperor, he had a servant that walked with him, and that servant's one job while Marcus Aurelius is going through stadiums and people are cheering him on, and that servant's one job was to constantly remind Marcus Aurelius, "You're just a man.
mm.
You're just a man. You're just a man." And as he walks through the crowd, he's reminded of his humanity. And I love that story because when we are these pouring professionals, we get some letters behind our name. We think that the sun doesn't rise and the moon doesn't set without our say so. But quite the opposite is true. We're here for a limited amount of time. There's only so much we can do with God's help. And so taking care of yourself is just something you should do. So the second thing I'll say into my rituals and my routines is not only reminding myself to say no and master no and sprinkle no's throughout my day, but I divide things into faith, family, friends, and fun. Those are my priorities in terms of
Mhm.
self care that I maintain throughout the day. I have to keep my spirit nourished. So I got to read the word. I got to listen to a sermon, listen to some gospel before I start my day. I gotta start my day with my faith, being grounded in faith. Family. I'm texting either mom, my big sister, maybe dad. I'm texting like cousins. I text a family. I talk to a family member once a day to just remind me of my roots and where I come from, and that
Yeah.
no matter what's out in this big old world, I always have a family to go back to. And then friends. I'm also talking to a friend. I talk to at least one friend every day, just to remind me that even though I was born into a family, there's a family that I chose, and there's a family that chooses me. And every day I'm gonna have some type of fun. I'm gonna enjoy something. Yeah, I'm gonna have a good time.
I feel like there was more. I feel like there was more just back there. Yes, Nick has he has showed me what it means to have a good time in DC. Okay.
Yeah.
That's a different type of y'all know if you know me, I'm from the country, okay. I'm a little rural on this side, and he has shown me what it's like to have fun in the big city. But it's funny that you what you said about Marcus Aurelius, and we just have to know. It reminds me of something someone said to me one time, and I remember it was before I had my daughter, and I was newly in a relationship, and I was doing a lot of different things, especially after undergrad. Like I was working on films, I was directing, I wanted to teach, I had a scientist background, I had a lot going on. And I was back and forth. I would drive to Baton Rouge, which is like 3.5 hours away from where I live. And I was just doing a lot of work, and it was very fulfilling. It was very rewarding. But the lady said to me, she was like, Alicia, you can do the things that you want to do, but you just can't do them all at the same time.
Mm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And I was very resentful of that statement. Like I thought she was just, like hating Loki. Like, why would you
mm-hmm,
I'm like, why would you tell me that? And I was thinking more of like she was telling me like, now you need to stay at home and you need to focus on, not be such a career driven, ambitious woman. And so that's how I took it in my 20s. But as I got older, I learned more about my own capacity. And nothing is wrong with having capacity. And I've always felt like I needed to be a high capacity person, and I was very high functioning.
Hmm.
What my normal was over what other people were doing day to day. Like, and I recognized that early on in my 20s. But as I got older, and especially after I had my daughter, I realized that I had to save my capacity for the things that mattered at that time. When I
Hmm.
was a new mother and I had a newborn, like I had less capacity than I do now. And so nothing was wrong with me slowing down for that season and taking 2 years, 3 years, and really just slowing down the projects that I was working on and things like that. And that was positively impacting my mental health. So I think that when we're talking about these really high achieving people, um, it's good to be aware of your capacity and how your capacity can change in different seasons of your life. And so now that my daughter is older, she just doesn't need as much like hands-on care. She rocking, I'm rolling. Like we can do
Hmm.
when we can travel. She asked me the other day, Mommy, can we go to Europe tomorrow? I'm like,
Hmm.
girl, like her thought process of being limited because she's a child is not because she just doesn't have that limit. Like she doesn't, have those limitations. So it's interesting that you would say that. A part of a lot of people that I connect with that are in the mental health space talk about how sometimes that their faith journey has been contradicting their knowledge about mental health.
Hmm.
And I can say that for me, I feel like I've quoted "be anxious for nothing" to myself. If I quoted it once, I've quoted it a million times.
Hmm.
But how do we go from um, acknowledging mental health in the faith space? How do we grow in that area? And how did you being in ministry shape the way that you viewed mental health?
Yeah, this is great. I think it's complex. I'm a Christian, so I do want to speak from that and acknowledge that other people may have different faith journeys that don't, that I'm not aware of what they're experiencing and how it may impact their mental health.
Yeah.
Um, I think from the Christian perspective, uh, I think what's important is to, with all things, um, go to the places that water your garden.
Mm,
And in terms of the church, all churches are not the same.
yeah.
We have denominations for a reason. Whether people think we should have denominations or not, we do.
Mm,
And that means that there are different flavors, and in different denominations, there are different churches, and there are different leaders and leadership structures at all of these places. I think one of the most important things is going to a place that waters your garden. And that means going to a church that doesn't associate mental health care with spiritual deficiency.
mm, yeah.
Um, Finding that place, and it's a part of it, it's a challenging, it's a sad, it's a it's a it is nothing more I can say than it's a challenging part of adulthood. But even with a therapist, you got to shop for a therapist. It
Yeah.
just because I get on the phone with you and you start providing me mental health care doesn't mean we're a good fit. And just because I walked in your church and I worshiped with you one time doesn't mean we're a good fit. You have to go to the places as a part of adulting. Go to the places, be around the people, date the person, marry the person who waters your garden.
Yeah. Yeah. I have had at least three therapists. I was thinking of like how many different
Mhm.
therapists have I had, and they all met a need for different seasons of my life. And so I love that you were talking about, not just shopping for therapists, but also shopping for churches. I think the same is true. Like there are churches that I remember I went to my old church from college recently. I was in New Orleans for something, and I passed through Baton Rouge, so I stopped there, where I went to Southern, as you can see. And so I stopped at my old church, and I hadn't been there in years, like maybe 6 or 7 years. Like, it was a long time. And I was like, man, like, I really grew here. Like, I felt a lot of nostalgia, because I was like, I remember myself like really encountering Christ here for the first time. And I was able to see how the church had grown. But I recognized, like, would like, if I moved back home, like, would this be a good fit for me in this season of my life as a 30 something year old lady? I don't know. I don't know. And so I think that's a part of, I'm having this epiphany as we're talking, but I think that's also a part of mental health,
Hmm.
is in all areas of your life finding alignment. A lot of times people are struggling because they're in a relationship with someone they're no longer aligned with. They're going to a church and struggling with things that, are lacking alignment in their lives, and then they're wondering why their quality of life is lower than they want it to be. So pivoting just a little bit, because when we were talking about church, that reminds me so much of the Black community, and church being a bedrock of the Black community. And so one of the biggest challenges that I have had with speaking with older people about mental health, and I'm very candid about, things like strategies to combat anxiety, walking, about meditation, yoga, and also medication. And so I'm very candid about that all the time. And it almost, I can see older people, like older Black people, like, you don't need no medication, girl. You
Hmm.
just need to pray.
Hmm.
And so why do you think that mental health conversations have historically been difficult in Black communities?
Yeah, it's multi-layered. Um, it's multi-layered. We have the history of psychological the domain of psychology and its relationship with Black people is hostile.
Yes.
So we carry that history in our blood and in our bones of psychologists diagnosing Black folks with drapetomania
Hmm.
if they wanted to flee the plantation because it was right and natural for them to be enslaved. So the fact that that was a type of diagnosis
Yeah.
within the field makes us to this day, even if we don't know there was a diagnosis, that's probably the lineage of our hesitation and relationship with mental health.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that I mean, in other ways, medicine has been hostile towards the Black community. You had the Tuskegee experiments,
Yes.
and so it's like, why would I take that medicine? I also think, that, so those are the systemic things. I also think that fundamentalist Christianity, the pray it away
Yeah.
type of thing can also be a deterrent in us getting the mental health care that we need.
Yeah. Yeah. You were saying something, and it reminded me, you were talking about how systemically we have things that have happened during slavery and after slavery that have contributed to some of the biases that we have as a community. And I was thinking that the first thing that came to my mind was swimming. You know,
Mhm.
I wish I could say that I could swim. I cannot. My daughter can. I put her in lessons every year. So I want to break that little generational curse.
Mhm.
But my mom cannot either. And so I remember when I would talk to, my European American brothers and sisters,
Mhm.
and I would always say, well, I can't swim. And I was like, my mom didn't teach me how to swim. She didn't, put me in lessons, and my mom can't swim either. And so I would always give them this history lesson. I was like, when my mom came up, they couldn't go to pools.
Mhm. Mhm.
My mom's not old. My mom's not even 70 yet.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
She would tell me stories about how they when they would go to the theater, they had to sit at the top, in the balcony. My grandparents were their family was sharecroppers,
Mm-hmm.
and my grandmother would tell me stories about how and she was valedictorian of her school. She was very smart, but they had delayed start for them because they were working the fields until October. And so all of these things in the Black community, I really feel like that trauma carries, like it carries generation to generation, even if we don't know why we do a thing. A lot of people don't know why they cook cabbage and black eyed peas, on New Year's Eve or New Year's
Mm-hmm.
Day, and so we just do it. We don't we don't know
Mm-hmm.
why we do it. We just know that we do it. We don't know why we have watch night service, but we just go.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
so that speaks to a lot just of the things that we have in our community that has just traveled through our generations. And so, what would you say, like, if you're talking about just normal people, but also therapists, like, how would you equip them, or how would you encourage them to approach when people are hesitant to discuss or contribute to the conversation around mental health?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that I love the term approach. You got to use one of the greatest gifts God gave you if you have them, which is your ears.
Yeah.
You have to listen. I think we go much further listening than we do talking,
Mhm.
and listen to your patients, to your clients, your potential patients, your potential clients, or that student that's in your classroom, and hear their stories. Let them express where they are, and then honor their personal stories and acknowledge the American story that they're situated in.
Yeah.
Um, I think that goes listening and acknowledging are the foundational are foundational steps that we can take into providing transformative care.
Yeah. And I think too, as teachers and teachers, principals, administrators, and higher education professors should be some sort of trauma informed. I think we all
Hmm.
should receive training in that area because I always talk about the kids that I worked with in K-12 and how so many of them had seen people die in front of them
Hmm.
in different
Hmm.
forms, whether it's a grandparent, whether it's a friend, and that grief and that trauma would carry into their behavior in the classroom almost all of the times that I've seen it.
Hmm.
So as we near the end, I want to talk a little bit about parenting. I mentioned earlier that Nick was an author, so I want him to tell us a little bit about his book that he has out. And it's centered and catered toward children. But as a parent or as a caregiver, what are some signs that parents should pay attention to emotionally and behaviorally, that a child could be struggling with their mental health?
Hmm. Hmm. The first thing I want to go to, and thank you for plugging the book. I appreciate you.
Tell us the name of the book.
Uh, the book is Carrie, the Caring Koala. Carrie spelled with the K. A Child's Guide to Therapy. It is available on Amazon, and it's a fun, interactive book that teaches elementary age children what therapy is and how it can help them manage their emotions and relationships. Kids love the book. It has a workbook in the back. It has resources for parents. And um, the question: what
Yes.
are
What are
some
some
signs?
signs? Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, so the first, I think parents need to be sensitive to the signs of abuse. Um,
Mm,
so uh your child being unusually distant, your child being private, your child hiding things from you, your child being scared to go over a certain family member or hearing that a family member or a friend is coming over, your child wanting to spend too much time with a family member or friend,
yeah.
unusual bruises, unusual, more adult interest, knowledge that didn't come from your communication or wouldn't have come from the playground, could all
Yeah.
be signs of abuse that need to be investigated, and I'm just encouraging those should raise some red flags. Um, I think in terms of other mental health challenges, academically, you're looking for that your child is having a hard time studying. That may not be laziness. That may not be effort. That might be mental health.
Yeah.
That might be an academic challenge, a cognitive challenge that's going on. And all cognitive challenges are not always in the deficit area, or sometimes a cognitive challenge, your child may be too smart for the school.
Yes. Yeah.
Um,
Or
or
smart in a different way.
Yes, exactly. The school may not be built to manage to honor your child's form of intelligence. That doesn't mean
Yeah.
your kid is lazy, your kid doesn't care. It just means they may not be in a system that honors the way their mind works. So we're looking for things like that. I want to talk about suicidal things. If your child is saying they don't feel they feel hopeless, if your child is experiencing bullying,
Hmm.
any grief because of a loss of a family member or of a friend, and they say they're hopeless, they feel distant. Those are all signs that your child needs some mental health care.
Yeah. Yeah. And I do think an awareness of it from when a child is born, and just awareness of mental health in general, can help you prepare as they get older, because you know what is normal in their behavior, and then you know what is abnormal. And then you also need to look at what is developmentally appropriate
Hmm.
for them. So, like, I remember when my daughter like blatantly lied for the first time, and I was like googling, like, is it normal for a 6 year old to lie?
Hmm.
I don't know what's normal. It's my first time here on this planet.
Hmm.
So so I think you have to, figure out what is developmentally appropriate, like especially as they get in the teens. I don't know if a kid's staying in their room all day or sleeping till 10, like all those things, if they're, a normal behavior, or if the child is really struggling. And I'm glad you mentioned about abuse. I just saw something really disturbing online about a possible instance of abuse, and then they're talking about the younger child was bedwetting, and how that can be a
Hmm.
symptom of abuse. And
Hmm.
I didn't know that.
Hmm.
Bedwetting when they
Hmm.
shouldn't.
Hmm.
So for everyone here, I hope that this conversation, opens your mind to how to be aware of your own mental health, how to help the people in your life, the people in that you serve, the people in your community, especially if you're a Christian, if you're a person of faith and you just don't know enough about mental health, but it's something that you see becoming prevalent in your circle. And also, if it's something that maybe you personally struggle with, and you know that how you're feeling is not normal, there's a host of resources online about how to get a therapist, and having a therapist, being on medication, having practices that you utilize to feel better. Nothing's wrong with that. That doesn't mean you're crazy. It doesn't mean you have some sort of stigma. It just means that you're trying to be well. I always use the analogy of you wouldn't tell someone with diabetes, like, don't take your medicine. That's, just pray.
Hmm.
Like, I would tell them to take their medication. So we need to treat mental illness and mental challenges the same way we treat physical illness and physical challenges. And so healing is ongoing. It's not a one time decision. It's not something you can just decide and everything will be okay. And I think addressing your mental health is a big part of healing. And so I hope this episode was helpful. My closing question for you is, if there's someone listening and they feel overwhelmed, or they're not sure where they should start in regards to mental health, what would you want them to hear?
I would want them to know that they are not alone. They're not alone in how they feel, and that there's nothing wrong with asking for help.
Mm,
There's nothing wrong with asking for help. Asking for help is a sign of strength, and we all need help sometimes. So fight for you because you're worth fighting for.
that's a perfect ending note right there. I feel like that should be a quote. That should be at the end of your next book. Put that in the book. But thank you so much. Like I said earlier, I appreciate you for being on the pod and for participating and being a part of our very first season. I knew I wanted to have you on and talk about all the things that you are an expert in, so I am grateful. And be on the lookout for our next episode, and I hope you guys enjoy it.
Hey, peace, everybody.